The dagga party has been at this for the longest time, and no wonder they were the happiest.
Well, absolutely. There was a great deal of vindication from their side. And they were just telling me that this is just a victorious moment from their side. This is something that they've just been waging for some time. But also, more importantly, it's quite important now that the ball is literally in the court of parliament to make sure that those amendments are carried out, because as much as the ruling has been made, there are still some grey areas. For example, the Constitutional Court was not able to prescribe the quantity because the police can still arrest you, because, in terms of the quantity, that's still a grey area as to what could be the quantity one can carry so that you're not taken to custody.
From what the dagga party, their reaction today, how do they see this coming out? Are they happy with the fact that there's going to be restrictions?
Well, they're absolutely happy, Vuyo, and also they're talking about the fact that this has been a great affirmation from the highest court in the land, as it specified that the use should be very private, but also the exposure to the young children. We know the country is battling a very high drug abuse, so the court was very clear in saying children should not be exposed to these drugs. But maybe just to get a sense from the reaction in the Constitutional Court of View, let's take a listen to the great deal of joy that they expressed.
Today's judgment is a vindication for the Rastafari community and the cannabis community that we deserve the right to be who we want to be here in our own homeland, to make use of the tobacco of the indigenous people of this country. And the judgment today represents a victory for choice and for freedom of choice. And the fact that we as African people and the Khoi people of this country, we have the right to pursue our own life projects, and that we do not want to imbibe and just imitate Western culture in what it is that we are doing. So we are proud, but we are also willing to be responsible, because we have always argued that this is for adults and that this is about choice and that it is about responsibility. And this is not an opportunity for South Africans to get goofed or to get high, but the judgment today represents an opportunity to put South Africans to work and for government to work together with people in order to change the face of the people of this country.
Of course, there's a whole range of issues that this landmark decision raises. The question of, for example, health of the children is what you were talking about. But also there may be people, do we know, for example, what the negative consequences of smoking dagga are?
Well, absolutely. One of the main arguments that had been put forward by government in its appeal, they were talking about the very implications of, for example, the healthcare facilities, where you have the rehabilitations being overcrowded, but also talking about very worrisome consequences like mental illness. So, but of course, those who are very pro marijuana, they have a very different argument to that. But also, more importantly, now it's just a matter of seeing. It was really interesting also to see the traditional healers. They were talking about widening the scope so that we can see the usage, not only just being used in a private space, where if one suffers from cancer, that can also be used. If one suffers from depression and many other illnesses as well, so the dagga can be used to that as well. So it was really interesting as well to see the scenes outside of the Constitutional Court. It was almost like a carnival of cannabis. And those pipes burning just before the judgment actually was handed down, seeing, just the smoke all over. It was really interesting to see how, for example, the Rastafarian community is so attached to dagga. For them, they're saying it's a holy herb, and they were saying it's their human rights. So hence also the issue of the privacy, the equality, that they should be allowed to use this particular drug without any obstruction from the side of police.
Drug authorities, of course, beg to differ.
Well, absolutely, Vuyo. And it was very interesting to hear that more reactions, a deluge of reactions continue to come. Perhaps if we can also take a listen to what other activists are saying.
You're still in contravention of the law because the law has not been changed yet. It is still a banned substance. We in South Africa are still signatories to 3 international conventions by the United Nations, World Health Organization, the fact that we've got an AU policy that we have to subscribe to as well. So it's not as easy as what we understand. However, there is a stay in prosecution that has been issued. And looking at the little bit that I've seen of the judgment, it's now left up to the policeman to decide whether in actual fact what I find you in possession with is a quantity that is excessive or not. How is he going to make that decision?
Of course, Carmen, we can't sit here and pretend what alcohol, for example, isn't dangerous. So any sense from today as to perhaps how they're going to be able to, let's say, borrow from the alcohol restrictions that are there to counter, the negative consequences of other drugs that are freely available and legal?
And it's quite interesting for you. That was another very key element in terms of the arguments that was used for by those who are pro-marijuana. They were saying, look, in this country you've got tobacco, you've got alcohol, and those are very addictive things as well. So why don't you also...
Soft drinks, folks.
Exactly. So it was very interesting how the courts then was able to say, look, let's just go back to 2017 when the Western Cape High Court, Judge Dennis Davis made that particular ruling, talking about the invalidity of 2 drugs acts that are governing the use of cannabis. So then a very strong point and a very affirmation from the highest court in the land saying, look, these acts really should be rectified. There are some constitutional defects. So now the very main responsibility lies with the Parliament to try and do away with some of those defects. And also that will pave a way in terms of some confusion and also in terms of the grey areas that are still creeping up in as far as this issue is concerned.